The pilot woke up that morning with a heaviness he hadn't felt before. It wasn't just the early hour or the fact that he had another flight to take. It was something deeper. He had spent decades in the air, guiding planes through storms and sunshine alike, and yet now, he felt a creeping doubt about his ability to keep doing this. His heart had been acting up more than usual, and the doctor's warnings echoed in his mind. Each beat felt fragile, each breath a reminder of the risks. He had loved flying all his life, but lately, every climb and descent brought a mix of joy and fear. In the quiet of his home, he went through his usual morning routine, but even the simplest tasks felt heavier than before. Pouring coffee, brushing his teeth, getting dressed, everything carried a subtle reminder that this might not be just another day. His family had urged him to consider retiring, but he wasn't ready to leave the sky behind. The sky had been his companion, his sanctuary, his world, and the thought of saying goodbye to it made his chest tighten in ways that had nothing to do with his heart condition. As he looked out the window, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the city. It was a sight he had seen countless times, yet it felt different this morning, almost like a farewell. By the time he arrived at the airport, the usual hum of activity around him felt distant. The security checks, the boarding process, the chatter of travelers, it all seemed ordinary, yet he noticed it all with heightened awareness. Each passenger had a story, a life unfolding in the brief moments before takeoff, and he felt a strange mix of connection and detachment. He was here to do his job, but inside a silent conversation was happening. He wondered if he would even make it back home after this flight. Would this be the last time he felt the plane lift beneath his hands? The thought was both terrifying and strangely freeing. As he walked down the jet bridge toward the plane, he greeted the cabin crew and co-pilot with his usual calm, practiced smile. No one could tell what was going on beneath the surface. He had always been the type to hide his worries, to carry the weight of responsibility without letting it show. He knew the people boarding the plane trusted him completely, and that trust was both a comfort and a pressure he had carried for years. Each nod, each greeting, each professional gesture was part of a rhythm he had followed for decades, and today, that rhythm felt different, like a final performance before the curtain fell. Once inside the cockpit, he ran through his pre-flight checks with meticulous care. The instruments, the controls, the safety systems, they all had to be perfect. He knew them by heart, every switch, every dial, every indicator, and yet his mind kept returning to a question he hadn't wanted to ask himself. Was he truly ready for whatever might happen this time? The co-pilot noticed a slight hesitation, a pause that wasn't typical, but the pilot quickly shook it off, offering a reassuring nod. He couldn't let fear show, not now, not with so many lives in his hands. As the plane began to taxi toward the runway, he felt the familiar thrill of acceleration, the subtle vibrations beneath his hands, the gentle hum of engines waking up. Flying had always been more than a job. It was a calling, a connection to something larger than himself. He loved the way the world spread out beneath him, the way clouds could feel close enough to touch, the way the horizon seemed endless. Yet today, even this beauty carried a shadow of uncertainty. Every movement, every adjustment of the controls felt like a test, not just of skill, but of endurance, of survival. He glanced at the co-pilot, a young, capable pilot eager to prove himself. The co-pilot's eyes were full of energy, trust, and perhaps a bit of nervous excitement. The pilot felt a pang of guilt and affection at the same time. He wanted to be sure that if something went wrong, this young pilot would have the guidance he needed. He wanted to protect him from fear, from the weight of responsibility, from the realization that life could change in an instant. And yet he also knew that experience could only take someone so far. Some lessons could only be learned in the cockpit, under pressure, in moments that felt impossible. The flight took off smoothly, the city shrinking beneath them, the clouds opening up into a vast expanse of blue. For a moment he allowed himself to breathe, to enjoy the familiar sensations of flight. The gentle tilt of the plane, the subtle changes in pressure, the hum of the engines in perfect harmony. But the relief was short-lived. A sharp pang in his chest reminded him that his body might not hold up this time. He clenched his jaw and tightened his grip on the controls, determined to keep going, to focus on the plane, the instruments, the lives entrusted to him. As the plane climbed higher, the rhythm of flying, which had once been second nature, became a delicate balance of concentration and caution. He monitored every gauge, every signal, aware that even the smallest oversight could have consequences. He felt the weight of every passenger, every crew member, every family waiting at the destination. The thought of leaving them in danger was unbearable, and yet he also had to contend with the limits of his own body, which were becoming increasingly apparent with each passing minute. Throughout the flight, he reflected on the many journeys he had taken, the storms he had navigated, the moments when he had felt invincible, and the times when he had been terrified. Flying had always been about trust, trust in his training, trust in his instincts, trust in the machines, and trust in himself. But now, as the pain in his chest grew, he realized that trust was no longer enough. He needed more than skill. He needed endurance, courage, and perhaps a bit of luck. The passengers were oblivious to the inner storm raging in the cockpit. Families chatted, travelers read, children played quietly, and the hum of conversation filled the cabin. The pilot felt a surge of protectiveness. These people had entrusted their lives to him, and he would not let them down. Every instruction, every adjustment of speed and altitude was calculated with precision. But behind it all, his mind was a whirlwind of fear and determination. He thought of his own family, the faces of loved ones he might not see again if things went wrong. The thought sharpened his focus, honed his instincts, and fueled a determination he hadn't realized he still possessed. Hours passed, the landscape below shifting from cityscape to countryside, the sun moving steadily across the sky. The pilot maintained his vigilance, managing the flight with a steady hand despite the growing discomfort. He spoke calmly to the co-pilot, offering guidance and reassurance, masking the pain he felt inside. Every word, every gesture was deliberate. He had learned over decades that confidence in the cockpit could steady not just the crew, but the entire plane. Panic was the enemy, and he could not afford to let it take root. As the flight continued, the pilot found moments of reflection amid the tension. He thought about the miracle of flight itself, the way humans had conquered the skies, the way machines could carry people across continents, the way lives could intersect in a single moment on a plane. He thought about the responsibility that came with it, the invisible bond between pilot and passenger, the trust that had to be earned and preserved with every flight. And he thought about his own mortality, about the fragile nature of life, and about the possibility that today could be different from all the days before. Despite the uncertainty, he felt a strange sense of clarity. Years of experience of facing emergencies, of making split-second decisions had prepared him for this moment. He realized that even though his body was showing signs of weakness, his mind was sharp, his instincts were honed, and his commitment was unwavering. This awareness brought a measure of calm, a steadiness he hadn't felt since he first started flying. He was not ready to give up. Not yet. As the plane continued toward its destination, the pilot focused on maintaining a delicate balance between caution and control. He monitored weather patterns, air traffic, and mechanical readings, all while keeping a vigilant eye on his own condition. The cockpit was a place of controlled chaos, where the slightest misstep could have significant consequences. Yet amidst the tension there was also beauty, the beauty of flight, of human achievement, and of the silent, invisible dance that kept a plane aloft. The co-pilot, sensing the pilot's unusual demeanor, remained attentive and ready to assist. Their communication was efficient, professional, and filled with an unspoken understanding. The young pilot looked up to the seasoned veteran, absorbing every instruction, every gesture, every subtle cue. The bond between them was a mix of mentorship, trust, and shared responsibility. And yet the older pilot could not help but feel the weight of his own vulnerability. He had faced storms before, but this was different. This was personal. This was a test of not just skill, but endurance, courage, and the human spirit. As the flight progressed, the pilot continued to navigate both the external and internal challenges. The plane moved smoothly through clear skies, but every beat of his heart reminded him of the fragility of life. Every passenger, every crew member, every family expecting their loved ones at the destination was a reminder of the stakes. And yet, even in the face of fear, he found determination, focus, and an unwavering commitment to see this journey through. By the time the plane was halfway to its destination, the pilot had settled into a rhythm that balanced caution with precision. He spoke calmly to the co-pilot, offered reassurance, and maintained control over the plane. But beneath the calm exterior, the storm of worry and pain continued. He knew that the real challenge was yet to come, and he braced himself for whatever the skies might throw at him. And in that moment, amidst the hum of engines and the quiet vigilance of the cockpit, he found a strange comfort, a sense that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do, even if the outcome remained uncertain. As the plane cruised steadily above the clouds, the pilot felt a sudden sharp ache in his chest. It was brief at first, almost like a sting, and he tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just fatigue, maybe stress. But the pain returned, stronger this time, and a wave of dizziness made him momentarily lose focus on the instruments. He gripped the controls tightly, taking deep breaths, trying to calm his racing mind. The co-pilot noticed his slight pause and furrowed brows, asking softly if everything was okay. The pilot forced a reassuring smile, nodding that it was nothing. But inside he knew this was more than just a passing discomfort. Minutes later, the pain became persistent. Sweat gathered on his forehead and his hands trembled just enough to make him notice. He realized he could no longer ignore the warning signs. His heart was telling him something urgent, something dangerous. The co-pilot watched him closely, sensing the gravity of the situation, and suggested they follow emergency procedures. The pilot agreed, though he hated admitting vulnerability. He had spent a lifetime guiding planes safely, and now he had to rely on someone else to take the reins if he could not continue. It was a humbling moment, one he never thought he would face in the cockpit. He instructed the co-pilot to take over certain controls, all while keeping a close eye on the gauges and instruments. The co-pilot's hands were steady, but the young pilot's mind raced with questions about what to do next. He had been trained for emergencies, but this was not a simulated crisis. This was real, and lives depended on their coordination. The passengers continued their routines, unaware that the people controlling the plane were managing a life-or-death situation. The pilot's mind went through a rapid series of calculations, contingency plans and emergency options, each one more urgent than the last. The pilot's chest tightened with each passing minute, and he realized that he might not be able to continue the flight for much longer. He communicated calmly with air traffic control, providing updates and requesting guidance, careful to keep his voice steady so the co-pilot could focus. Each word was chosen with precision, each instruction measured to ensure clarity and safety. He knew that panic, even a hint of it, could disrupt the delicate balance of trust and responsibility that held the cockpit together. He drew on decades of experience, recalling every emergency drill, every training session, every critical moment he had ever faced. He needed to rely on his instincts now more than ever. Despite the pain, the pilot noticed small details that gave him hope. The co-pilot was following instructions perfectly, maintaining control of the plane and showing initiative when needed. The teamwork that had been drilled into them during training was working in real time. Even in his weakened state, the pilot felt a surge of confidence. He guided the co-pilot with clear, calm commands, each one backed by years of knowledge and skill. The co-pilot's eyes showed trust, and that trust strengthened the pilot's resolve. He knew he had to stay conscious, stay engaged, and stay connected to the plane and its crew. As the flight progressed, the pilot's thoughts drifted briefly to his family. He imagined the worried faces of his loved ones, the messages they might have sent him if they knew how he felt. Fear and love collided in his mind, creating a mix of urgency and determination. He knew he could not afford to give in to fear. The passengers depended on them, and he had a duty that went beyond his personal struggle. Even as his body protested, he found strength in the responsibility he carried. It was a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The plane encountered mild turbulence, shaking slightly as it passed through a layer of clouds. The co-pilot adjusted the controls, following the pilot's instructions with precision. The pilot's own movements were careful, conserving energy while ensuring that he remained ready to intervene if necessary. He felt each vibration, each shift in pressure, as a signal to stay alert, to anticipate what might come next. Time seemed to stretch, each minute carrying weight, each second filled with the awareness of mortality and duty. Despite the intense situation, the pilot found moments of clarity. His mind worked in slow, deliberate steps, filtering out panic and focusing on what mattered most. He thought about all the flights he had taken, the lives he had safely guided through storms, and the training that had prepared him for emergencies just like this. Each memory reinforced his confidence, and he realized that even in weakness he was still capable. He shared this confidence with the co-pilot, offering guidance that was both technical and reassuring, creating a calm in the cockpit amid the storm of uncertainty. Hours into the flight, the pain in his chest became more severe. He realized that his physical endurance was reaching its limit, and he began to prepare himself mentally for the possibility that he might have to step back entirely. He spoke to the co-pilot with deliberate calmness, explaining what to do if he could no longer continue. Each instruction was clear, precise, and designed to ensure the safety of everyone on board. It was a test of trust, of preparation, and of human instinct. The co-pilot nodded, absorbing every word, ready to act. The bond between them, forged in shared responsibility and guided by experience, became the anchor that held the cockpit steady. Throughout this, the passengers remained unaware of the gravity of the situation. A young family watched a movie, a businessman typed on his laptop, and a group of friends chatted quietly. The contrast between the calm inside the cabin and the tension in the cockpit was striking. The pilot thought about how ordinary life continued around him, how people went about their routines, unaware that their safety depended on someone fighting against both internal and external challenges. It was a reminder of the quiet heroism that often goes unnoticed, of the invisible effort that keeps ordinary life moving safely. As the plane approached the midpoint of its journey, the pilot felt a brief moment of weakness, a lightheadedness that made him grasp the controls to steady himself. He breathed deeply, focusing on the mechanics of flying, the rhythm of the engines, and the patterns of the instruments. He discovered that in this extreme moment something remarkable happened. His instincts sharpened, his mind became focused, and his experience took over in a way that was almost automatic. It was a strange, almost miraculous clarity that allowed him to continue guiding the plane despite his physical limitations. He communicated with the co-pilot frequently, reinforcing instructions, double-checking readings, and offering advice with calm authority. The young pilot responded with precision, handling minor adjustments and monitoring the instruments with growing confidence. It was a delicate dance of trust, skill, and human instinct. Each decision, each command, each observation carried weight, and the pilot knew that a single mistake could have serious consequences. Yet he also recognized the extraordinary capacity of the human mind to respond under pressure, to rise above fear, and to act with clarity in the face of danger. The flight crew worked together seamlessly, maintaining order and calm while navigating a situation that could have been disastrous. The pilot's mind was a mixture of calculation and intuition, relying on years of experience and deep understanding of the aircraft's behavior. He monitored fuel levels, engine performance, and altitude, adjusting as necessary, all while keeping his own physical condition in mind. It was a balancing act of mental focus, emotional control, and physical restraint. Every moment required attention, yet he found a strange sense of rhythm and flow in the challenge. As the hours passed, the pilot continued to reflect on the nature of responsibility and courage. He realized that bravery is often quiet, unnoticed, and personal. It is not always the dramatic gestures that matter most, but the steady, deliberate actions that preserve life and maintain trust. He thought about the lives on board, the families waiting at their destinations, and the faith they had placed in the crew. The weight of that trust was immense, but it also provided a source of strength. He drew energy from the knowledge that he was fulfilling his duty, protecting others even as his body struggled. With each passing moment, the pilot's determination grew. He was committed to seeing the flight through, to ensuring that everyone on board reached their destination safely. Even as his chest tightened, his hands trembled, and his body signaled its limits, his mind remained focused and sharp. He guided the co-pilot with calm authority, reinforcing their teamwork and maintaining a sense of order in the cockpit. It was a test of endurance, skill, and human spirit, and he rose to the challenge with remarkable resilience. By the time the plane reached the final stretch of the journey, the pilot's body was exhausted, but his mind remained alert. He had navigated the worst of the internal storm, relying on experience, instinct, and careful planning. He prepared for the approach to the destination, reviewing landing procedures, communicating with air traffic control, and coordinating with the co-pilot. Every action was deliberate, every instruction precise, and every decision informed by decades of training and knowledge. The co-pilot followed the pilot's guidance with confidence, Adjusting the controls as instructed and monitoring the instruments closely, the bond between them had strengthened through the shared challenge, creating a sense of unity and mutual reliance. The pilot realized that even in moments of vulnerability, human connection and trust could provide the strength needed to overcome adversity. It was a lesson that went beyond flying, a reflection of life itself. As the plane descended toward its destination, the pilot felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The most difficult part of the journey was approaching, but he also recognized the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. Even in the face of physical weakness, fear, and uncertainty, he had maintained focus, guided the co-pilot, and ensured the safety of everyone on board. It was a reminder that courage, preparation, and trust can create extraordinary outcomes even in the most challenging circumstances. The passengers remained unaware of the battle that had unfolded above them. They continued their routines, absorbed in conversations, movies, or the changing landscape below. The pilot thought about the invisible threads that connect people, the trust placed in unseen hands, and the quiet heroism that often goes unnoticed. It was a humbling realization, one that reinforced his sense of purpose and commitment. As the plane neared the airport, the pilot prepared for the final stage of the flight. His body was weak, his chest ached, but his mind was focused. He guided the co-pilot through the approach, double-checking instruments, monitoring altitude, and communicating with air traffic control. Each instruction was deliberate, precise, and designed to ensure a safe landing. Despite the exhaustion and fear, he felt a sense of calm clarity, a strange, almost miraculous focus that allowed him to continue leading the flight. The co-pilot responded with confidence, following instructions carefully and making minor adjustments as needed. The teamwork between the two pilots had become a seamless, almost instinctive partnership. Trust, experience, and human determination combined to create a sense of order and control amidst the potential chaos. The pilot felt a deep sense of responsibility, but also a quiet satisfaction in knowing that his guidance had made a difference, that he had helped maintain safety even when his own body was failing. As the plane descended through the clouds, the pilot held on to a fragile hope. He had faced a life-threatening challenge, relied on his instincts, and guided the co-pilot with calm authority. Now the final moments of the flight approached, and he knew that his focus, experience, and determination would be tested once more. The passengers remained unaware, carrying on with their routines, while the cockpit held a story of courage, skill, and human resilience that few would ever know. The pilot could feel every beat of his heart as the plane glided through the sky. The pain in his chest was no longer subtle. It was sharp, constant, and demanding his full attention. He gritted his teeth, fighting the panic that threatened to take over. He had faced emergencies before, but this one was personal. It wasn't just a storm outside or mechanical failure. It was his own body betraying him. Yet amid the fear, a strange clarity began to emerge. His mind sharpened, instincts kicking in like old friends. Every instrument, every gauge, every subtle vibration of the plane seemed to speak directly to him. He listened. The co-pilot, aware that something was wrong, stayed close, following every instruction carefully. He asked questions, but the pilot's calm, steady voice reassured him, masking the turmoil within. The young pilot's hands moved with precision, but the seasoned pilot could see the tension in his posture, the slight hesitation in his eyes. He knew that even the most skilled co-pilot could falter under pressure, and he needed to guide him through the worst of this flight. With effort, he kept his instructions clear, concise, and deliberate, ensuring the co-pilot could focus without distraction. Outside, the sky was deceptively calm. The sun gleamed on the clouds, making the horizon look peaceful, but the cockpit was a battleground of nerves, pain, and split-second decisions. The pilot's chest hurt with every movement, yet he forced himself to remain upright, alert, and focused. He began going over emergency landing procedures in his mind, anticipating every possible scenario, every challenge they might face before reaching the airport. Each thought was a lifeline, each plan a step toward survival. Suddenly, a series of small warning lights blinked on the control panel. Nothing catastrophic, yet enough to demand immediate attention. The pilot instructed the co-pilot on each step, carefully checking readings and cross-referencing instruments. Despite the growing pain, his mind worked faster than ever. Experience surged through him, filling gaps that weakness in his body threatened to expose. Every decision he made was precise, practiced, and informed by decades in the air. It was almost as if the plane itself responded to his focus, moving under his hands with a harmony he had not fully appreciated until this crisis. The co-pilot adjusted the controls as instructed, but the tension in his voice betrayed his growing anxiety. He asked the pilot what to do next, and the older pilot responded with calm authority, drawing on instinct and memory to guide them through each step. He realized that panic would only make things worse, so he maintained a quiet, commanding presence. He reminded himself that fear was natural, but control was essential. Lives were in their hands, and there was no room for hesitation. As they neared a particularly turbulent layer of clouds, the plane jolted unexpectedly. The co-pilot reacted swiftly, adjusting altitude and speed, but the sudden movement sent a fresh wave of pain through the pilot's chest. He gritted his teeth, fighting through it, and continued to guide the young pilot. He realized that he had to rely on a mixture of instinct and training, letting muscle memory take over while he conserved his limited energy. It was a delicate balance. Too much exertion could put him over the edge, but too little might compromise the safety of everyone on board. The pilot began speaking more frequently, breaking down each maneuver into simple, manageable steps. He focused on clarity, repetition, and reassurance. He noticed the co-pilot's hands trembling slightly, a natural reaction to the stress, and reminded him to breathe, to focus on the instruments, and to trust his training. The communication became a rhythm, almost like a silent dance, with each instruction followed by immediate action. They were working together as one, the seasoned pilot's guidance stabilizing the co-pilot's movements and composure. Hours seemed to stretch into an eternity as the plane navigated the clouds, with every mile bringing them closer to safety, but also closer to the limits of the pilot's endurance. His thoughts drifted briefly to his family. He imagined their faces, the relief they would feel if he managed to land safely. The thought strengthened him, pushing him past the waves of pain and exhaustion. He realized that love, responsibility, and duty could become powerful motivators, helping him summon strength when his body faltered. The plane's descent toward the destination began, and with it came a new set of challenges. The air was unstable. Gusts buffeted the wings, and visibility dropped in patches of thick cloud. The co-pilot followed instructions closely, adjusting the throttle and flaps while the pilot monitored every instrument, anticipating changes in wind and pressure. It was a test of skill, endurance, and focus. Even as his chest burned and his energy waned, the pilot's mind remained sharp. Every decision, every instruction, every calculation was vital. A sudden warning light blinked on the console. The co-pilot's eyes widened in alarm, but the pilot's calm voice guided him through the procedure. The issue was minor, but the timing was critical. The older pilot realized that experience was now their greatest ally. He instructed the co-pilot step by step, checking readings and monitoring the plane's response. His body wanted to collapse, but his mind refused to let go. Instinct and knowledge were carrying them forward, and for a brief moment, it felt almost miraculous how precisely everything was aligning despite the physical strain. The passengers remained unaware, chatting quietly, reading, or sleeping, while the cockpit was a place of tension, focus, and near panic. The contrast was striking, and the pilot felt a surge of responsibility. He had to ensure the safety of every life on board, and that meant pushing through pain, staying alert, and relying on every ounce of skill he had accumulated over decades. The co-pilot's confidence grew with each successful maneuver, and together, they formed a team that could face the storm, both external and internal. As the final approach began, the pilot's body reached its absolute limit. He felt lightheaded, each breath a struggle, each heartbeat a reminder of his mortality. Yet amid the pain, his mind was incredibly focused. He guided the co-pilot with precision, reminding him of each step, anticipating changes in wind, and monitoring altitude with meticulous care. Every movement of the controls was deliberate, every adjustment calculated. It was a demonstration of human resilience, training, and instinct operating under extreme pressure. The plane descended through layers of clouds, the runway now faintly visible in the distance. Turbulence made each moment unpredictable, yet the co-pilot's hands remained steady, guided by the pilot's instructions. The older pilot felt a strange sense of calm in the chaos. He realized that in moments of extreme challenge, clarity could emerge in ways that were almost miraculous. His body might be failing, But his mind, honed by years of experience, was performing at its highest level. Instinct and knowledge had merged to create a powerful force capable of guiding the plane safely. He continued speaking in measured tones, breaking down each maneuver, reinforcing instructions, and maintaining the co-pilot's focus. The young pilot absorbed every word, following guidance with precision and growing confidence. Together they navigated the challenges of descent, wind gusts, and approaching obstacles. The pilot felt a mixture of pain, exhaustion, and determination, knowing that the final moments would define the success of the flight. The runway grew clearer as they descended, lights twinkling through the clouds. The pilot's chest ached with every breath, yet he remained unwavering in his guidance. He reminded the co-pilot of speed adjustments, flaps deployment, and alignment, each instruction delivered with clarity. The co-pilot responded with precision, executing maneuvers with confidence, and the older pilot felt a glimmer of hope. The plane was under control, the team functioning seamlessly, and the miracle of human skill and determination was unfolding. As they touched down, the pilot allowed himself a moment of quiet relief. The tires met the runway smoothly, brakes engaged, and the plane slowed steadily. He felt a mix of exhaustion, triumph, and disbelief. They had navigated a life-threatening situation together, relying on experience, instinct, and unwavering focus. The passengers, unaware of the struggle behind the cockpit doors, continued their routine, blissfully unaware that their safety had been safeguarded through human determination and near-miraculous focus. The pilot's body sagged in the seat, every muscle aching, but his mind remained alert enough to guide the co-pilot through taxiing to the gate. Emergency crews were on standby, but the landing had been smooth. The co-pilot glanced at him with a mix of awe and gratitude. The older pilot allowed himself a faint smile, knowing that despite the pain and fear, they had succeeded. He had faced a personal crisis mid-flight and emerged victorious, guiding the plane and its passengers safely to the ground. As the engines powered down, the pilot felt the weight of the ordeal settle on him. The cockpit, once a place of tension and near panic, was now silent, except for the gentle hum of systems shutting down. He thought about the extraordinary circumstances that had allowed him to maintain clarity and control despite his physical limitations. He thought about the lives on board, the trust placed in him, and the strength he had found in a moment of near despair. It was a reminder that human spirit, experience, and instinct could create extraordinary outcomes, even against daunting odds. The co-pilot helped him from his seat, guiding him toward medical attention, and the pilot allowed himself to be led, acknowledging the vulnerability he had fought so hard to overcome. He had been ready to say goodbye, ready to step away from the sky, but instead, a near miracle had occurred. Experience, instinct, and determination had combined to carry him and everyone on board safely through one of the most challenging flights of his life. The story of the cockpit, of courage under pressure, and of human resilience was a testament to the power of preparation, trust, and the indomitable will to persevere. The plane was now in its final stretch, descending steadily toward the airport. Outside, the clouds swirled with subtle turbulence, and the runway lights appeared faint through the haze. Inside the cockpit, the pilot felt every sensation intensely. His chest ached. His hands trembled slightly, but his mind remained razor-sharp. He knew that the most critical moments were ahead. He had guided planes through storms countless times before, but never had a personal challenge of this magnitude pressed so closely upon him. The stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on him like never before. He instructed the co-pilot to maintain precise alignment with the runway. The young pilot responded with a calm focus that belied the tension in the cockpit. Each adjustment of the controls required careful attention, as gusts of wind shifted the plane slightly off course. The pilot's voice remained steady, calm, and deliberate, offering instructions that were clear, simple, and actionable. Even as the pain in his chest intensified, he found a strange clarity, as if the urgency had honed his instincts to their sharpest edge. He relied on experience, muscle memory, and intuition, guiding the co-pilot with every step. The plane encountered a stronger gust that rocked the cabin. The co-pilot adjusted the controls swiftly, but the pilot's quick observation caught a minor misalignment. He corrected it immediately, giving precise instructions and adjustments. His body protested, but he did not let it slow him. Every second counted, and every decision had to be exact. The co-pilot followed his lead, trusting the guidance, while the passengers remained blissfully unaware of the challenges unfolding above them. It was a delicate dance of trust, knowledge, and determination. As the plane descended lower, the pilot began to visualize the runway, mentally mapping out each landing step. He thought about approach speed, altitude adjustments, flaps positioning, and potential wind variations. Every detail mattered. The plane was responsive to his guidance, yet the physical strain was mounting. Each breath felt heavier, each heartbeat sharper. He knew he had to conserve energy while remaining fully present. Fatigue was an enemy, but focus and instinct had become his allies. The co-pilot occasionally asked questions, and the pilot answered with clarity and calm. He emphasized one instruction at a time, prioritizing the most critical maneuvers. His voice carried a quiet authority, reassuring the co-pilot while masking his own discomfort. They worked as a seamless team, relying on each other's strengths, trust, and careful attention. The cockpit was tense but controlled, each decision a lifeline for everyone on board. A particularly strong gust shook the plane, and for a moment, the runway seemed farther away than it should have. The pilot's chest tightened and a wave of dizziness passed over him, but he fought to remain steady. He focused entirely on the instruments, on the co-pilot's hands, on the rhythm of the engines. The external turbulence mirrored his internal struggle, yet he refused to surrender. He drew on every lesson learned in decades of flying, every emergency he had navigated, every crisis overcome. Experience became instinct, and instinct guided action. The plane descended further, the runway becoming clearer. The pilot monitored airspeed, altitude, and alignment, guiding the co-pilot through each critical adjustment. He reminded the young pilot to anticipate shifts in wind, to maintain steady pressure on the controls, and to trust the instruments. Their communication was precise, deliberate, and filled with unspoken understanding. Even as his body weakened, his mind orchestrated every movement, every calculation, every minor correction. It was a testament to human resilience and the extraordinary capacity for focus under pressure. Passengers continued their routines, unaware of the struggle above them. A family quietly shared snacks, a traveler read a book, and a child looked out the window at the clouds. Their calm contrasted sharply with the intense focus of the cockpit, where every second mattered. The pilot thought about them, about their trust in his hands, and that thought fueled a quiet determination. He could not fail them, and that responsibility carried him forward, even as pain and fatigue threatened to overwhelm him. The plane approached a final layer of clouds and turbulence intensified. The co-pilot responded to each adjustment with skill and composure, guided by the pilot's instructions. Every minor movement of the controls had to be precise. Even a slight miscalculation could have serious consequences. The pilot's mind moved faster than his body, analyzing, anticipating, and directing. He felt a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and determination, all channeled into keeping the plane safe. This was a moment where courage was measured not by boldness, but by careful, deliberate action. The runway lights grew brighter as they descended below the clouds. The pilot focused on alignment, approach speed, and final flaps adjustment. He communicated with air traffic control, confirming clearances and offering updates on their status. His voice was calm, steady, and professional, masking the intensity of his physical struggle. The co-pilot responded with precision, executing the final maneuvers with confidence under the pilot's guidance. The cockpit was a small world of focus, trust, and determination, a microcosm of human endurance and skill. As the plane neared touchdown, the pilot felt the last wave of fatigue, every muscle aching, every breath heavy. Yet he remained fully present, guiding the co-pilot through the final adjustments. The wheels met the runway smoothly, and the plane began to slow. The pilot allowed himself a brief, cautious exhale, but the work was not over. Taxiing to the gate required continued focus, careful control, and vigilance. The co-pilot executed each instruction with growing confidence, inspired by the older pilot's guidance and composure. They navigated the taxiway, engines humming steadily, reaching the gate safely. The pilot finally allowed himself to relax slightly, though he knew medical attention awaited him immediately. He had guided the plane and all its passengers safely to the ground. The co-pilot looked at him with gratitude, awe, and relief. The older pilot offered a faint, tired smile, acknowledging the success of their shared effort. They had faced a life-threatening challenge together, relying on skill, trust, and human determination. As the engines powered down, the weight of the ordeal settled on the pilot. He allowed himself to feel the exhaustion, the relief, and the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Medical personnel approached, ready to assist, and the pilot permitted himself to be led, acknowledging the vulnerability he had fought so hard to overcome. The near miracle of landing safely despite his physical struggle was a testament to human resilience, focus, and experience. Passengers began to disembark, still unaware of the extraordinary events that had transpired above them. They went about their day, greeted by friends or waiting for ground transportation, oblivious to the intense struggle that had preserved their safety. The pilot reflected on this contrast, feeling a deep sense of humility and awe at the silent heroism that often goes unseen. The responsibility and trust placed in him had been immense, yet it had also been the source of his strength. In the quiet aftermath, the pilot thought about the lessons of the day. Courage is not always loud or dramatic. It often manifests as quiet determination, skillful action, and unwavering focus under pressure. Experience, trust, and instinct can guide people through challenges that seem insurmountable. Even in moments of extreme weakness, the human mind and spirit can rise to the occasion, achieving what might feel like a miracle. The co-pilot had learned more than technical skills that day. He had witnessed the depth of resilience, focus, and leadership. The pilot, now resting in the care of medical personnel, reflected on his life in aviation. He realized that the sky had always been more than a job. It had been a calling, a passion, a place where he had discovered courage, responsibility, and purpose. Today, he had faced a challenge that tested every aspect of his being, and he had emerged not only alive, but triumphant. It was a profound reminder of the fragility and strength of life, the power of preparation, and the extraordinary capabilities of the human spirit. As he was escorted from the cockpit to the ambulance, he glanced back at the plane, the co-pilot, and the crew. There was gratitude, respect, and a quiet acknowledgement of shared struggle and success. The journey had been harrowing, but they had navigated it together, relying on trust, experience, and determination. The pilot felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had fulfilled his duty and that the passengers were safe. The cockpit had witnessed a near miracle, one born from human skill, focus, and courage. The story of that flight would remain largely unknown to the passengers, but to those in the cockpit, it was a moment of profound significance. The pilot, once ready to say goodbye, had found strength in adversity, clarity in chaos, and the power to overcome even the most daunting challenge. The flight had tested him to his limits, but it had also reaffirmed the resilience of the human spirit and the remarkable capacity for courage, skill, and determination to create extraordinary outcomes when they are needed most.